At the end of this video, you're gonna learn about one of the most destructive figures to ever touch the Overwatch scene. A lot of you watching this video won't know who Coach Prima is, and don't worry, neither did I. But Prima has allegedly shattered the mentals of a multitude of different players, allegedly harassed and falsely copyright striked fellow content creators, and has allegedly lied about having any tier 1 or tier 2 experience as an Overwatch League or Contenders coach. One of the largest Overwatch TikTok creators and tier 2 coach, Coach Osi, made a tweet warning orgs and players to stay away from Prima and has given me 20 different contacts of whom Prima has affected. I hope to show both sides of the story, including some of Prima's own words to me, as well as to show evidence that supports the claims made in the video, and to urge orgs and players to please background check your coaches, other players, and frankly, anyone in general, so a messy situation like this never has to happen again. So let's start off with who Coach Prima is. The reason why people don't know her, despite having claimed tier 1 and tier 2 experience, is partly to do with the name rebrands. See, in mid-2021, when I was still on console, I actually knew Coach Prima, but they went under the name Pax. She wanted to recruit top-end console coaches for her organisation, and I vaguely ended up showing interest, but I never joined due to the quality of the staff and players. However, Prima, or Pax, unfortunately ended up in a serious incident because of a drunk driver and was in a hospital for almost a year paralysed. It's also worth noting that she is 30 years old, teaches online at 5 different US universities, specialises in the humanities subjects, including philosophy, so big up, and is raising 2 nephews and a niece. In other words, Prima is an adult. There really isn't an excuse for the behaviour that you're going to see within the next 15 minutes or so, starting off with her fraudulent coaching history. Up to now, Prima claims to have coached in Contenders and Collegiate, she claims to have coached around Korean Contenders trials as a floater, and the biggest claim, that she trialled for Contenders and Overwatch League teams. The last claim there in that screenshot that you're seeing, she claims she never said this, and that any screenshots of her saying this are fake, but I'll get onto that later. As of this video, she has no Liquipedia, and for those who don't know, Liquipedia is basically a third-party track record that helps to track the path of staff, players, and coaches, and an actual Contenders coach with a Liquipedia, called Toki, pointed this out to her. Toki explicitly clarified that they're not doing this to harass Prima, they're just questioning her. And when Toki started talking to Prima in DMs, she blocked them. Not a good look. Back to her claims. She claims that when she was floating around in Korea, she didn't sign to any organisation because of contracts, which I'll also get back to. She also claims that she's coached individual Overwatch League players in APAC. Now, to give Prima some leeway, I do know coaches that have claimed to coach players to an Overwatch League level, such as Coach Cuffy. But the very big difference that Cuffy has to Prima is that he's got actual references on Wikipedia. I've met the guy and the team he coached IRL, he has tons of connections across the scene, and the dude's educational content is actually good, all of which give him strong credibility. After questioning Prima further, she claims that she never actually did any coaching, she just attended the scrims. After I questioned her further, she claims that one of the teams she attended scrims for was called Bullfrog in Well, an ex-Chinese Contenders team. So let's say Prima is telling the truth. She did float around in APAC, and she did attend those scrims. I think claiming to be a tier 2 or a tier 1 coach when you've never stuck around to properly coach a team before and you're nowhere to be seen on Wikipedia is pretty disingenuous and disrespectful to actual quality tier 2 and tier 1 coaches who have put in the legwork to get to where they are. However, let's say Prima is actually lying. You might ask me, Kajor, how do you know this? Well, remember those Korean contracts? Contracts exist so people actually do their job. They also exist so people get paid. But Prima claims that all her coaching is free and that she's never been in it for money. So surely the solution is to just coach Korean tier 2 for free. I questioned Prima about this and she said that she didn't sign any of the contracts, A, because of the language barrier, and B, because of the time commitments. Which is odd considering that just 4 months ago, you had the time to make an edited 90-minute video talking about your experience with Prestige Esports, which I'll get onto later in the video, don't worry. And you also claimed that you spent over 80 hours a week for that organisation. But regardless, even if you didn't have the time commitment, that's fine. Just don't go around claiming you have Overwatch League and Contenders experience. which you immediately contradict yourself anyways by saying that you never coached. You just went to those scrims. Remember that screenshot where Prima said she trialed for Contenders in Overwatch League as a coach? Well, she claims that screenshot was photoshopped, which is fair. Discord screenshots can be easily faked. But the person that questioned Prima on her previous experience, who requested to me to stay anonymous, provided the full screenshot and a link straight to their message which says no access. You might be wondering, why does it say no access? Well, that's because Prima had privated or deleted that channel, which was a chit-chat general type of channel, and made a new channel 6 minutes after she got caught lying. How do I know it was 6 minutes? Well, the anonymous person who was messaging Prima sent their last message at 3:47 PM Eastern Time. And if you go to the very first message of her new chit-chat channel, it was sent on the same day at 3:53 PM. It says 8:53, but that's because I'm in the UK and it's a 5-hour difference between myself and Eastern Time Zone, but 6 minutes, just to cover up your tracks. So that's the background check on Prima. In short, she's constantly changed her story. One second she's telling me that she does have experience coaching in the Overwatch League and in Contenders, the next she's claiming she's only attended scrims, and the next she's claiming that the screenshots of her claiming that experience are photoshopped. Regardless, the best case scenario for Prima is that she did actually attend those scrims, but she's just being disingenuous and is still lying about actually coaching Tier 1 and Tier 2. But we're only getting started. Back in February 2023, Prima claims that she's had coaches like Spylo, Jane, myself, and Thor coaching her teams. I have no idea why she includes my name, because I can say myself, I have never coached for any of her teams. The closest I came to was spectating one of her scrims back in 2021 and remembering some Lucio player on King's Row having the worst positioning I think I've ever seen, but that's about it. As for Spylo, he said himself that he doesn't know who Prima is. I actually invited Spylo to join Prima's server back in 2021, and as far as I know, he just vibed. He never coached. Same thing with Jane too. He was in one of her old servers, but from what I know, he never coached any of her teams. Why would you go around claiming this? Using our names to boost your reputation? Nah, bloods. I think OC puts it quite well. She claims to have Tier 1 and Tier 2 experience, specifically in Korea. She has no Wikipedia page to verify her background. She constantly dodges team specifics and team names, and she coached a French organization that was barely T3, aka Prestige, and taught that organization inside out. I'll talk about that French org in a moment, so don't worry, but to finish off this section, this is what it's like talking to Prima. I asked a specific question, and unless you really push her, she just dodges. Everyone, everywhere. Brilliant. Now onto Prima's actual coaching. Was it any good? Well, to put it simply, at best, Prima was a mediocre coach, regurgitating stuff from myself, Spylo, Natta, Egoistcat, and many others. At worst, the advice she gave was dogmatic and actively hurt the team more than it helped. I got quite a few testimonials. Some people wanted to be kept anonymous, so I'm gonna rattle through them as fast as I can. Kajor, one of the trials for Prestige Esports, one of Prima's previous organizations, says that they're such a bad coach, that Prima gave zero input to the team, even though 80% of them were actually on the main roster, so not tryouts, and they basically got no advice. Once Kajor pointed out these flaws to Prima about her coaching, Prima blocked Kajor. There's also more stuff from Toki, the Contenders coach I mentioned earlier. Prima critiqued Toki for telling a Sojourn to stand main, even though according to Toki, in the context they were talking about, Prima had agreed with them. I find it kinda funny since Prima directly told me about Toki in my DMs, but decides to leave out the parts where she actually agreed with them. I've got more screenshots from people also critiquing her coaching, saying the max that people have gone to is from Masters 5 to Masters 4 in 3 months, and that she assigned players these TLAs, or team learning activities, which we can think of as Overwatch homework basically. The general consensus from these TLAs were that they weren't very useful for most people, though there is some testimonial from Lazy or Lilypads where she did say that, to Prima's credits, they did find that stuff valuable even as a high ranked player. In essence, most of the feedback about Prima's coaching was negative, but I want to dig a little deeper into analysing why this is likely the case, and this leads me into the fourth section, abuse, power and control. You see, Prima made a 90-minute video talking about her experience with the French organization Prestige Esports. I'm not gonna bore you with the details because, to be honest, after watching most of the video, I can undoubtedly say that the organization Prima worked for, aka Prestige, weren't organized and do have some faults. And I also don't doubt for a second that Prima was one of the most hardworking people at the organization. But two things can be true at once, and Prima actually exposes some of her own flaws as a coach here. She puts a clip of a basketball coach talking about the difference between hard work and competing.
Is they mistake hard work and competitiveness.
Prima, this literally applies to you. You have said yourself, you've put in 80 hours at least into that organization. You've clearly put in the hard work, yet you've never competed at a high open division level. The French tournament that you are coaching your team for, AFO, is less prestigious than open division. And as someone who has helped coach a team to 28th in Flash Ops and 25th in Overwatch CS, I can confidently tell you that this iceberg of how to make it in OD just isn't true. You also claim that one of the managers, Hox, were telling you what to do and were trying to do your job for you. Yet you show messages of Hox just trying to understand your rationale. To me, these messages don't read like Hox ordering or telling you what to do, but just kindly asking out of curiosity while you're making the choices you're making. The beautiful irony is that you call her a control freak, yet you're telling her to fuck off. This is bad interpersonal skills. Head coaches especially need to know how to communicate and cooperate with people. You then also complain about one of the subs, named Azo, suggesting to the team that Iliari is good against dive, which you say is 100% false information. To back up your argument, you then post a 3-minute Spyro clip which actually partially supports what Azo is saying. Prima, you have a PhD in philosophy, yet it seems you haven't read Kant's Enlightenment. You know what Kant says in one of the first lines in that text? Immaturity is the inability to use one's own understanding without the guidance of another. The motto of enlightenment is to have the courage to use your own understanding. Yet you seem incapable of doing this because you copy-paste a Spyro clip without contextualizing what he says or how it supports your arguments. For reference, Spyro basically said that Iliari was good into Sombra Tracer, but not great into Echo, Genji, Soldier, Kiriko stuff because those comps can whittle down the Iliari beforehand with their range. You can contextualize what Spyro is saying here by saying that while Iliari isn't great against that comp, she's not terrible either. The benefit you get when playing Iliari into those heroes is that you can take more wider, more aggressive angles because you don't have to worry about being marked by Sombra Tracer early on. I would say to you, Prima, just as Kant would, use your own understanding, but it appears that you have none to use in the first place. You claim your time at Prestige had dictator style management. No, it didn't. You were the dictator that wanted full control over every aspect of the team. Even one of the most demanding coaches in the history of Overwatch, Gunba, was still on the leash by his general manager, being Albert. And when Gunba's players told him to lax off the following year, he did so. Every single person I've talked to, and not just regarding Prestige, has mentioned your desire for power and full control. If they question you in the slightest, you block them or heavily retaliate. And going even further, there's testimony that because you manipulated who you were, some of your players were emotionally hurt. That's not what good coaches do, Prima. I mean, come on, you're touching 30. To top it off, there's also some drama you had with one of Chasm's mods, Ball and Danny. And credit to Ball and Danny for choosing to not stay anonymous, since the story would be quite a lot harder to explain without it. In short, Prima, being a supposed former top 500 ball player, was involved in Chasm's community quite heavily, doing quite a bit of work, but she decides to leave that community after Chasm claims that VOD viewing doesn't work. Prima then spins it to a Discord that Danny was a jealous mod and manipulated Chasm into banning her, which Prima doesn't provide any proof of. There's other bits as well, but Prima decides to burn bridges with someone who actually got along with them a fair amount. And to add the cherry on top, there's the discrimination. Prima has a deleted tweet from June the 21st, 2023, showcasing some pretty rudimentary Matt Walsh type jargon, and from a video by the YouTuber Demers, there's also clips of Prima being toxic and racist, the worst of which I'll play now.
Why are my Chinese teammates fucking defunct?
Because they're f***ing Chinese, that's why. Why you fucking cat-eating piece of shit?
I think it's also worth mentioning that Demers actually got copyright striked by Prima and had to re-upload that original video multiple times. I think he also talked about how one of the videos got age restricted, which did kill it in the algorithm, which makes sense. So a future editing Kajor decides to just blur out what Prima says in the King's Row clip, That's probably why. I don't think Prima can copyright strike this video because I haven't actually used enough of her content on her channel for her to actually be able to do that. But yeah, there is a chance that she'll try her best to try and get this video taken down. I would not be surprised if that did actually happen. So if I do re-upload this video in the future, that's gonna be why. So there's a lot to this video. Prima's been caught in multiple contradictions and lies about her credibility as a coach. She's had an inflammatory and toxic past. She has a pretty controlling and retaliatory character. And she's a bad coach, from both an interpersonal standpoint and from a game knowledge standpoint too. I could dig deeper and look at her old coaching VODs, but that wouldn't change any of the conclusions about her. The message to organizations is clear. Background check your coaches. If Ragnarok or Prestige or any organization prior to that had really pushed Prima to give some kind of reference or some kind of third-party verification that she does actually have the experience she claims to have, I wouldn't have even needed to make this video because Prima wouldn't have gotten this far. The message I have to Prima is actually quite a sympathetic one. Prima, I told you in DMs that I totally sympathize with how much effort you poured into Prestige and your other ventures, and how people don't respect or at least appreciate and value your contribution. I sympathize with that because I know how it feels. Not just with coaching, but even in content creation. Putting effort into making something quality and people just don't care. Putting in effort to thank a community that doesn't thank you back. Putting in effort to care about someone and they just don't care about you back. We've all been there. And I know how that can breed anger, frustration, and resentment. But my sympathy can only extend so far. You're 30, and look at this video. How many people have to get hurt for you to learn to control your emotions? We both do philosophy. We both have knowledge about stoicism, and I'm sure just like me, you chose to do philosophy to help better and improve your own life. There's a part of me that's a bit worried that you're going to retaliate again and lash out in anger when you receive fair and due critique. Maybe you even try and copyright strike this video, but ultimately, it's up to you to choose how people are going to remember your legacy. My sincere and genuine advice to you is to either publicly or privately apologize to the people you've affected, to question yourself as to why you want so much control whenever you coach, get on meditation, and read the 3 following books. Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Evolution of Cooperation by Axelrod, and probably the most important book I've ever read, Holiday's Ego is the Enemy. I think it's both possible for me to point out the wrongs someone does and try and get them to hold accountability for it, but to also not demonize that person and not genuinely hope that they can change for the better. Anyways, that's it for the video. This took me a while to research, and none of this would be possible without OC,